The number one attack vector in cybersecurity isn't a zero-day exploit. It's actually you. Social engineering, insider threats, pretexting, and phishing, they all work because humans are wired to trust. Now, my guest today spent over 2 decades at the FBI recruiting spies and running behavioral analysis for counterintelligence operations. And if you think that sounds awesome, you're absolutely correct. He literally studied how bad actors manipulate people for a living, and now he's teaching the rest of us how to recognize it and defend against it. Robin Dreeke, welcome to Simply Cyber.
Hey, thanks, Jerry. So super great to be here. And boy, you've really hit it out of the park and right on the mark at the beginning. That is, the human vector is the most vulnerable because we are so susceptible to people that are manipulating trust in our lives.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is something. At least I think the first step is really awareness. So let's talk about the attacker's mindset. Now, you spent years recruiting spies, people who are actively betraying their country in some instances. When you look at how cyber criminals run social engineering campaigns, how closely does their playbook mirror what you saw from foreign intelligence operatives trying to flip an asset?
It's exactly the same because you hit it right on the mark. And that is every human being that is going to operate against you with an agenda that's not transparent, because all these elements have to be in place. They're going to use trust, and they're going to use trust against you, and they're going to use all the behavioral skills and tools and techniques they have to do that. And so whether you're trying to inspire someone to trust you to betray their country or anything else, at the national security level, or you're going to be using trust to betray secrets of or proprietary information inside a company, it's all exactly the same, because the skills and tools and techniques and the motivations of all human beings are exactly the same, regardless of age, generation, demographic, economic status, social status, you name it. How we act and behave as a human being is really garnered from our genetics, our biology, and then also how our experiences growing up, that nature part and nurture part come together.
Well, insider threats are one of the most expensive and underreported problems in cybersecurity specifically. From a behavioral standpoint, what are the early signals that someone inside an organization is being cultivated or is compromised or is already turned? And what do most security teams just completely miss?
Yeah, insider threat obviously is one of the greatest challenges we have, and we place so much time and attention on it. And for ages on end, when I was still in the FBI, we would do lots of insider threat training and awareness campaigns, and inevitably people keep putting out these checklists. Look for this, look for this, look for this. And the problem with a checklist is if you give yourself a confirmation bias on a checklist, one, you're going to miss everything else, and two, you're going to start going on a witch hunt. And part of an insider threat is people that think you're out to get them. And you create a culture where you're creating your own insider threats by the insider threat program itself. But I always kind of rely on this number one thing I always work on. And matter of fact, one of my colleagues that worked nothing but espionage cases his entire career had a very simple saying: happy people don't commit espionage, but not all unhappy people will. So think in terms of the insider threat. Happy people do not think about being an insider threat, but just because you're unhappy doesn't mean they will. So the first thing I'm looking for an insider threat program is ensuring I have good leadership, good culture, good climate, because if I have happy people, they're not going to be an insider threat. On the converse side, what you got to look for first is unhappy people, morale's low, someone feeling disenfranchised. Those are going to be your hot spots that you really want to pay attention to first, and then we can move on from there.
Now, your book you wrote, It's Not All About Me. It's a framework for building quick rapport. That same framework, ego suspension, active listening, making someone feel valued, is exactly one-to-one what a skilled social engineer in the cyber world uses to manipulate a target. How did defenders use this knowledge to flip the script and recognize when someone's running those techniques on them?
Yeah, so accurate and so spot on. The tools and techniques for quick rapport and trust and building those great connections are exactly the same, whether you're a good white hat that is defending the justice of others, or you're a malicious individual with an agenda and an intent. And the key word there is agenda. As human beings, we can really pick up when someone's having a bad day, when someone's feeling off, someone creeps us out. And it's really important to think about When someone inspires you to feel a certain way, it's because you're giving off some signals and signs. And a lot of times it's because there's incongruence between words, actions, and deeds. So someone that could be using these skills, tools, and techniques for great, sincere, organic, genuine rapport is making it all about the other person. That's why I talk about how to shift that focus from ourselves to others, because it allows people to feel seen, valued, and heard, and feel safe. And when you do so free of an agenda, your only agenda is to be a resource for their success, prosperity, and a great place at work. Everything's congruent. Now, what happens is when you get a malicious social engineer in there, or just an insider threat, a hacker, I don't care what you want to call it, they can use the same techniques, but there's an agenda. There's an incongruence between how they feel about you as a tool to further their own goals and aspirations, or not. And so we pick up on these incongruences. And the really big keys here is tempo. Malicious people tend to focus on themselves and not read your tempo at all. And so they're pushing the tempo. They're going for quick returns on investments of time and energy. And also, the greatest test ever, they lack transparency about what it is they're trying to do.
A follow-up question. So when you say that they're, incongruous and disingenuous about their interest, but their interest in you is kind of what their goal is. I mean, is there any like quick hits or technique that, say someone's like, oh man, I'm really hitting it off with this person I just met at an airport bar or something. I mean, is there a quick question or a quick way to maybe test that in any capacity without being weird, where you're like, okay, like I told you something 10 minutes ago. Tell it back to me.
So first of all, if anyone makes me feel really, really good and I'm having a great conversation, I note it. And because ask yourself this, how many times during the course of your day, week, or month do you actually have a conversation where you're like, oh my God, that was the best thing ever. I can't wait to have another one with this person. And so it just stands out. So if they're using these skills, tools, and techniques really good, you're going to recognize you had a great day, a great engagement. And then also ask yourself this is the second part of that. Who was talking more, them or you? What was I sharing? What were they asking? What were they eliciting from me by not asking questions, but steering the topics in conversation, which all can be completely fine and congruent and good. I always then get on a heightened alert. Where's the ask? And if I kind of poke at, oh, we had a great conversation, Jerry. I can't wait to chat again. I'm curious. What did you have in mind, for what you want to talk about next time we get together? Or, what's one of your main challenges, priorities, goals, or hot spots or friction points in life you're dealing with right now? I want to kind of reverse it back and see where in there might be an agenda. What I should hear back is transparency on the agenda. So no, I'm just here for work. I'm doing this or this. Their tempo of return and reply should be very congruent with the natural conversation you just had. Now, if they're, being obtuse, they're steering the conversation away, they're not answering the correct question directly, or they take a pause and a second to think about it, they shift that tempo in some way, we got a hot spot. And if we got hot spots, I slow that tempo down, I back up and really think harder before I keep engaging.
Your book is called It's Not All About Me, but the subtitle is The Top 10 Techniques for Building Quick Rapport with Anyone. Now, whether you're doing this with social engineering, malicious intent, or you're just trying to build rapport with your girlfriend's dad that you're just meeting for the first time, or maybe the person interviewing you across the table, of the top 10 techniques, can you give us a taste of one of these techniques so people can kind of appreciate and understand what this book really can do for them?
Yeah, I'm going to go for the anchor of all things, and that is ego suspension. Number one. And it's so hard to practice the easy thing to say, which is suspend your ego. And one thing you can do every day of your life is don't argue context. As human beings, we're genetically, biologically geared to prove someone else wrong if we hear something we don't like to hear or doesn't fit our own confirmation bias of what we think about what's going on in the world. I mean, just take politics these days, for example. Yeah. If someone you're engaging doesn't sit where you sit on a political spectrum, all you want to do is judge the living hell out of them and argue that context. If you want to blow rapport, argue it. If you want to build rapport, seek to understand. And this is what non-judgmental active curiosity is about in suspending your ego. It doesn't say I'm going to cave in and agree with you. No, it has nothing to do with that. It means I'm going to seek to understand your position about how you came up with that. So say you're in a conversation with someone and someone spews something that you totally disagree with. Our typical response is, that's not, Jerry, that's not what I believe. Here's what I think. Bam, 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 bam. Meanwhile, because I'm challenging you, I'm not accepting your opinion and the time and effort you put into that, your shields go up. There's no information go in. As opposed to use the keys of communication, which is seeking your thoughts and opinions, talk in terms of what's important to you, validate you non-judgmentally, and give you choices. One of those 4 things. So what I'm going to do is, instead of arguing it or fighting back, I'm going to say, wow, Jerry, I haven't quite heard it put that way before. It sounds like you put a lot of time, thought, and energy into that. How did you come up with that? So I'm seeking a thought and opinion, talking about what's in terms of your thing, and I'm validating it by seeking to understand more. That's the one thing you can do more every single day. And nowhere in there did I say, Jerry, you're completely right. It has nothing to do with it.
Security awareness training is largely a checkbox exercise right now, which is awful, right? You watch a video, pass a quiz, move on, and you are compliant. But behavior doesn't change that way. Based on what you know about how people actually process trust and threats, what would a genuinely effective human security awareness program look like compared to what most organizations do today?
Yeah, a great internal security program on a human side is pretty simple, actually. But again, it takes bandwidth because you have to focus on individuals. And so what you want to do is you want to start at baseline. When you are hiring someone, part of that onboarding, first of all, you want to get a read on their energy and their tempo and their vibe. People need to be positive. And so when you baseline someone with a positive aspect and effect when they come on to the job and come on the business, that should be what's maintained, unless you actually have issues with higher management or something like that. And it's creating a culture of distrust. But if you actually have a good, healthy culture and you baseline what normal looks like for this person when they first onboarding, before the grind starts hitting, you should have open, honest communication, transparency, and a level of vulnerability. In other words, they own their mistakes. They're able to own up to it. They can actually say, here's what we're going to work on. So we're looking for those 3 keys of behavior of trust: open, honest communication, transparency, and vulnerability. When you baseline what normal looks like for them, that's what they do in polygraph exams anyway. Polygraph is more of not detecting deception, it's detecting deviations in your physiological responses to a question, a stimulus of some sort. So that's what we're basically doing when we're looking for insider threats. We are looking for who's deviating from a normal baseline. How long does it take effect? How long has it been in place? And are they changing the behavior from open, honest communication, transparency, and vulnerability to something that is not transparent? They're not owning their behaviors and they're being angry. They're shifting from positive aspect to negative. They see themselves as a wound collector or a victim of all situations. They're a grievance collector. Those are the behaviors that are really going to spike and you should then focus on. And the first thing you do is, because they're not there yet, you have a conversation, say, hey, Jerry, what's going on? Something's changed, something's happened. I probably did something off-putting, offsetting, or something's going on at work. What can I do to make this right for you before, it gets a little out of control for yourself? Something along those lines. Touch the pain point before it becomes exasperated.
Now, for the practitioners watching, so our SOC analysts, our GRC folks, and security leaders, what's one behavioral red flag that, if they train themselves to spot it, would meaningfully reduce their organizational and personal risk from manipulation-based attacks?
I'm going to go for transparency. Transparency is really the end-all, be-all when it comes to detecting if we got an issue or a problem. So transparency can look a lot of different ways. If someone's volunteering transparency, great. But if all of a sudden we got a red flag or a blip or a wobble, as I call them, or a tremor in the force, this is where we need to pay attention and we just have a conversation. Because if you're feeling a wobble from someone, that means it's a red flag to them. And when you go to explore, say, hey, Jerry, tell me what's going on. I should hear, see, and feel transparency with something. Now, granted, they can say, it's a little bit too private for what I'm going on and I'd rather not share it. Well, that's being transparent that it's private and something's going on here. So, and if they're responding with that same tempo means a lot to me with human beings. We have a tempo of how we speak, our modulation, our tenor, intonation, also our body language, our energy level. We notice wobbles in tempo. If someone's responding to a direct question about a pain point, a flag that we're seeing, a wobble, and they're responding with the same tempo and they're being as transparent as they possibly can, clear, succinct answers with our follow-up questions, it's okay. It's most likely okay. And they know that you care, that they're being seen and valued. So that's what you want to do. Now, if all of a sudden I ask that question, we get some stress indicators, compression, blocking, blading, walking away. They're trying to answer the question without answering the question. And then when you circle back again for clarification and they refuse to give you clarification, this is an opportunity for a deeper conversation that we need kind of pull back, regroup, and then just make a note. Hey, we have an issue here. We need to dive a little deeper because someone is starting going down that deep, dark path of potentially, because they're not there, that of potentially being an issue for us and for themselves, really.
Wow. Robin, this has been an incredibly valuable conversation, and the overlap between behavioral intelligence and cybersecurity is something that this Simply Cyber community and the larger cyber community doesn't really talk about nearly enough. And you just changed how a lot of people are going to think about the human side of risk, which I'm a huge fan of, because as a GRC professional and CISO, like the technical side, there's a lot of tooling available, but the human side is where there's massive risk. Now, Robin's updated book, It's Not All About Me, drops March 17th, and we'll put a link in the description below so you can check it out and go grab your copy and learn the other 9 techniques besides ego suspension. And if this conversation hit different for you, drop a comment below with your insights and maybe what thing that Robin said hit the hardest. And if you're not subscribed, why not hit subscribe? We're having conversations like this all the time here at Simply Cyber. Robin, thank you so very much. And until next time, stay secure.
Thanks, Jerry.